The primary focus of what I'll be doing is really centered around thought leadership for GroupM. There's some established collateral that ties into this, whether it's the this year, next year forecasts for global advertising spending trends, or the work that Rob Norman has done on video, and I'll be initially collaborating certainly with them. There's a lot of related work, I think, that'll be supporting that. Maybe not so different in some ways than the work I did when I was at Pivotal Research, but much more centered around what our clients need, which is, say, many of the world's largest marketers. And so I think that's a change of orientation. There's probably going to be a lot more that's more focused on just helping individual practitioners maybe put a more perspective on what they know. I'll never claim to know as much as the individual practitioners about what they do on a day-to-day basis, but as I did in prior roles, and certainly the most recent one, I hopefully help to put it all together in a big thematic view about how everything is evolving.
Brian, give us your thoughts about the state of the industry that you have followed for so many years so closely, and now you're joining.
Yeah.
Give us an idea of this moment in time, not necessarily with WPP, but more broadly the industry.
Well, I certainly stand by everything I wrote when I was an analyst covering the sector. Obviously, that was informed, I think, by having worked in the industry prior to that. And I think that the durability of the agency space was never in question for me. Even when I had sell recommendations on all of the stocks in the sector, I think there were temporal issues, if you will, and that played out. But I think we're now at a point where, okay, so all the agencies went through a period of time where what they had was not necessarily going to match what clients really needed, and most of the group has established something different, or at least they've started to invest more heavily towards whether it's more detailed data offerings or marketing tech offerings. Certainly in the case of WPP, WPP always had the best assets of the group. They always had the best geographic reach of the group. The point of the whole industry is having always being able to find some way to grow and find some way to help clients do better. I don't think that changes, so I'm not worried at all about the the durability. In fact, I do think that as they've been investing more against what clients really need, that there is an opportunity to resume growth back towards kind of a normal level that we used to see in prior years.
And Ryan, I wanted to ask you about here at the IAB, stuff that you've heard from the stage or in the hallways or in the breakout sessions, some interesting some observations you might have on the current conversation. Excitement, trepidation.
Yeah.
What's your take on things?
I think that minds have really been concentrated at this event around the direct brand economy, and certainly that's why I'm here. Before I knew I'd be leaving my old role, I'd started working on Amazon as a stock and covering it, and more really trying to think about how marketers, manufacturers were thinking about the continuum between using Amazon as a retail channel and direct-to-consumer brand initiatives and other forms of digital sales. And I think that this event is really, really centered around that in terms of where the IAB is trying to concentrate minds. There is a big there. I think what a lot of people have missed, though, is that although a lot of the emerging smaller D2C brands are significant and increasingly important, the big story is not in them, it's the consequences of what they mean for the larger incumbent manufacturer marketers. Because that was the point I made when I did some work on this last year. I could quantify that the entirety of the FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, and apparel sectors, call it $1.2 trillion of spending in the United States. The entirety of the IAB 250, I estimated, was somewhere around $40 billion. Growing probably 40%. That 1.2 trillion number is growing around 3%. In other words, the bulk of the growth was coming from this small subset of marketers, right? And I think that because larger manufacturers have come to understand this, they are themselves investing against these initiatives. And so when you look at what the growth rates are, in some of the research I just produced for this event, we could see that the growth of the pure play D2C brands is decelerating. But the revenue that we're seeing come in from the largest manufacturers is still solidly in 40% kind of growth rates from a small base. And so the bigger story is really what this means for the long term. Because if you're a manufacturer in the FMCG space, you've got 3 or 4% of your revenue coming from digital or e-commerce, and you're growing that number at 40%. I think it's symptomatic of how your whole business focus is evolving over time.